Welcome to 247 Real Talk. This is your host, Julian Perry. It's a pleasure to be here with you again for another week, another episode of the 247 Real Talk podcast. I hope you had a great week. I know I did. I was going to record yesterday, but yesterday, for those of you who don't know me that well, yesterday was my birthday, and I'm thankful and blessed to have another year around the sun and looking forward to the next one. So for all of you who did send birthday wishes, thank you so much. And on this week's episode, I had so many things to choose from. It seems like the news is beginning to become the gift that keeps on giving. So much so that I'm thinking of starting a possible Monday night breaking news live, where I'll come on live just for a few minutes and sort of give you the highlights of the week. Hoping that it'll keep you in touch, because I only do one episode a week, so we only really discuss one topic a week. And sometimes, depending on what's going on in the news, it can seem repetitive, but it is what it is. So this week, we're going to talk about how our house is coming tumbling down. So sit back, relax, and I'll be right back with you. So welcome back to 247 Real Talk Podcast. As I said, it's a pleasure to be with you once again. I'm Julian Perry, your host, for those of you who are new to the podcast. And I say that this week for the first time in a long time, because I have received emails from listeners all over the world, from listeners who want to be guests on the show. I've spent the last week putting things back together. As I mentioned to most of you, you've seen a lot of changes in the home studio. The headphones are gone. The mics are from my face, so we can have an intimate conversation. And now I've re-added the ability to have callers, phone callers, as guests calling in. And I guess after that, depending on how it goes, maybe I'll switch to having or add them as video calls, so that those of you who watch me on YouTube can see not just my face but theirs. It's been a pretty good weather week. My allergies have been bothering me a little bit, but and for those of you who don't know, I do take allergy shots weekly. Last week I was not feeling well, so I had to skip the shot. So if you're looking at me on YouTube and I'm blinking a bit more than normal, that means that my eyes are irritated. I can already feel it in my eyes. But anyway, enough about me and on to the subject matter, since I do try these days to get a little shorter with my episodes and pack a little bit more information into them. If you find that I speak quickly, yes, that's something I'm working on, but these episodes are not scripted. You hear them as I think them and speak them. So in my introduction, I said we're going to talk a little bit about the house that's crumbling down, and that house would be the House of Representatives. The last time we talked about this, we talked about the fact that Speaker Kevin McCarthy, who basically sold his soul to the devil to become Speaker, who was given the job after 15 votes, something that should only take one vote, maybe two if there's a really close issue, but 15 votes before he was able to win the job. And as part of the concession, he agreed to allow any one member to call for a vote for him to be removed, which is exactly what came back to haunt him, and he was removed. As I remarked in that previous episode, karma is something else, because he actually got removed for doing the one thing that even Democrats supported him on, and that was reaching across the aisle to find a workable deal that would have avoided the government shutdown. And understand this clearly. We the people, we the ones who are, and you the ones, and I and all of us that keep having these conversations. You, the people that I keep reaching out to, many of you were people who would have been hurt by a government shutdown. Some directly, some indirectly. I've always mentioned that when a government shutdown occurs, the Capitol Police, and all the other federal agents who are protecting and supporting the very representatives and senators don't get paid. The people in their offices don't get paid. Who gets paid? Still, the senators and the Congress and the representatives, all the members of Congress, who are the ones who shut government down, they still get paid. I've often drawn the analogy that, if I go to work and I don't do my job, I don't get paid, so why should they? Because if a government shuts down, to me, that means you have not done your job. So on to the topic of tonight where I say the house is crumbling down. And when I say that, I want to be clear. Today, there was a second vote for Representative Jordan to become Speaker. And in his first vote, he fell short by, I think they said, 20 votes. In his second vote, he fell short by 22. And many Republican members have made it clear that if he goes for another vote, he'll lose by even more. What that says to me is you really have a split Republican base. And the split is growing larger and larger. I'm not sure, in everything there's good and there's bad. So let's look at the bad. The bad is, I think, that there's a faction there that's really radical, that's so boastful, that's so unempathetic, that's so out of touch or don't care about the true struggles of the actual people who elect them, that they stick to their hard-nosed ideology with very little wiggle room. Things they believe or they say should be right. People get rich and maybe, they're entrepreneurs and they get blessed and they get rich. They don't look at it or they don't remember or care about the people that were insignificant to them who helped them along the way to get there. They simply say, I worked hard and I got rich. You got to do the same. If you don't, well, too bad. And I say this because, we've talked a lot about student loans and the fact that how unmoving people are. People in Congress, people in the Senate who got millions of PPP loans forgiven and have voted and stayed hard on the issue of forgiving $10,000 and $20,000 of student loans. But I don't want to make this about student loans. I want to make this about the divide in the House of Representatives. Because to me, and I want your opinions. In a respectful way, I want you to do what you usually do and email me and tell me what your thoughts are. But here are my thoughts. Since we started talking about the elections coming up next year, many have assumed that the presumptive Republican candidate is ex-President Trump. And I have to say, for a long time, and still somewhat so, I was very skeptical about people's ability to really exercise their own minds and thoughts and to stop the brainwashing and recognize that you can be a member of a party, you can believe in the ideology of the party, and you can believe in righteousness at the same time. I don't think it makes sense, at least to me, for any person, Republican, Democratic, Independent, Libertarian, whatever you are, who tells me that they are completely 100% aligned with the ideology of their party. This is one of the reasons that I constantly say I feel like a man with no home, because although you have to register with a party to vote, I feel like I have no allegiance to any one of them as such. I believe I can go into the voting booth and vote for a Republican candidate for one thing and a Democratic candidate for another thing and a Libertarian candidate for another thing. I'm looking at what each individual stands for, their track record, what I digest as their sincerity and their abilities, and not walk into the voting booth and say, I'm Republican, all Republican. I'm Democrat, all Democrat. Even checking off names of people, not even bothering to check their history. I think if more people had decided to use independent judgment and not be so brainwashed by the fact that they're part, or so lazy, I would say, to investigate and just go along with party lines, we would not have had issues like we do in New York, where we have Representative George Santos, who is a complete disgrace and shameful to even the staunchest of Republicans. But when we talk about the House crumbling down, it's such an interesting time. I honestly believe, this is my belief, that come elections next year, the candidates that are there will not be the candidates that we presume. And I feel so, at least for the Republican Party. Why? Because I feel that there are people who better represent the values of a party. And I believe the base is beginning to recognize that. Jordan can't get the votes needed to be House Speaker. And according to his own party, it's a waste of time voting again on him because the divide is getting larger. I'm looking over here to because I put a note up on the screen to my left here, and I'm looking at what the second round votes were for Speaker. And here's what's remarkable. The candidate, you needed 217 votes in the House of Representatives to be nominated Speaker. The candidate, and now, Republicans let's keep in mind the Republicans have the majority in the House. The candidate with the highest number of votes for Speaker of the House is Democrat Hakeem Jeffries. I'm looking over the numbers of the last vote, which was taken a few hours ago, and no one has 217, but Hakeem Jeffries has 212, and Jordan has 199. What this says to me is that Hakeem Jeffries is 5 votes short of being Speaker of the House of the minority party, or the party in the House. What does that tell you? Well, for me, I'm not 100% clear on what it represents, but it tells me that maybe people are starting to think. Maybe podcasts like mine and so many others that keep pounding away at the horrible political atmosphere in Washington are beginning to take their toll. Maybe constituents, maybe the population across the United States. And yes, I know this is hopeful thinking, but I believe in keeping hope alive. I believe that righteousness ultimately will prevail, even though we live in a world that makes unrighteousness seem so dominating at this time. But I believe that there are a lot of splits in every party and every ideology because people are beginning to go back to independent thinking. And people are realizing that when they're done with all this nonsense and the rallies and the this and the that, they come home to the same home with the same struggles. Cost of living is too high. Rent is too high. Student loan repayments are ridiculous. And the whole ideology of that is dumbfounding. And yes, I'm going to do another episode on that, only because I heard that there's a new effort by the Biden administration to relieve those in student loan debt, and I'm going to touch that probably in my next episode next week. I'm not sure. But what I'm trying to do here is to get the majority of you to start paying attention to what's happening in Washington. This is the perfect time, the perfect climate for you to do what I've been asking for so long, to start sending messages to the senators, to the representatives as well, both sides, Houses and House of Representatives. Why? Because if we give support to those who have a more neutral, more balanced ideology, we take away powers from those who want to be so radical. I told you it's a very simple exercise. Don't make it seem burdensome. Write down how you truly feel. Make it in a Word document. Copy and paste it into every online website of every candidate, every representative and every senator who has that forum, and most of them do. If you don't get a response, send it every 2 days if you have to. Post it on your social media. Now, I know that's a hard thing to ask because what I've found is when you post things on social media, we're still dealing with people who will, rather than have an intelligent conversation, will attack. And I don't know if you've noticed that, but we live in such a toxic time that I know what I'm asking you to do is hard. When you go out in your day and you deal with your job and you deal with your commute and you come home, you deal with your children, you finally go to relax and you pick up your phone and you look at your social media, the last thing you want to do is see someone who is, forgive my English, who is ignorant, spewing anger, hatred, and vile things at you because you expressed an opinion. Keep your opinions clean. And I would tell you, anyone who does that, block them. And make it known within the circles of people who want to have intelligent conversation that these individuals need to be blocked. We need to get back to a place of decency where we can have honest, truthful debates. And at the end of the debate, if we can't come to a 100% agreement, those who can agree to disagree and still live with a certain level of decorum, respect for humanity, for each other. Our world is in such a toxic place that I see people make simple comments online and the responses are so nasty that you can't even understand what this individual's life must be like, that is the first thing that comes out of their mouth. I've seen the ones too where the conversations start civil and they ramp up to something that is vulgar and unacceptable. And that too is unacceptable. But I'm saying there are ones who come right out of the gate on comment one and come from way over, like you have done them a vile act, that you have committed a crime against them because you voiced your opinion. It takes a little effort. It takes, a certain amount of resilience. Doing what I do here, speaking with you does. I find my job in terms of managing comments easier because I'm in this to grow a base of like-minded people. When I say like-minded, I don't mean believing what I believe. I believing in honest, clean debate. We can have differences, but believing in having enough constructive conversation and movement forward to create a better system in every way, in every different aspect that we challenge and that we take on, that benefits the majority of us in an uplifting, righteous, and humane way. I'm not asking for agreement. And because of that, I keep asking you to subscribe and share this podcast. It is an important and critical time in our history. Now, I wonder what would happen if 212-5, so 5 more Republicans. There's also a group. So here's what the votes broke down to be. 212 for Hakeem Jeffries, 199 for Jim Jordan, 7 for Scalise, 5 for Representative McCarthy. He still has his followers. And then there's a category that says 10 that says others. So if at this point, if 5 of the 10 others, for instance, voted for Hakeem Jeffries, we would make history again, right? I'm not sure. Has that ever happened? I haven't ever researched it to see if that's happened before where the minority party gets to speak. The point is, I don't know him, and that's not what I'm about. What I'm about is what I've heard so far is that even Republican members are saying that they're willing to work with him and he can reach across the aisle and we can start movement again in our government that's as a stalemate. What do we the people do when the people we elect in Washington can't even get to a point where they can get back to the business of governing the country? What does it tell you about those candidates that we've elected? This is the 3rd podcast episode I'm doing where I bring up the term again, term limits. Limiting the amount of time this toxic people can stay in government and put us as a stalemate while we struggle each and every day in our lives and they sit down, pompous as they are in an aristocracy. We own this. No. And as generations change, the people who are governing our time should look more like us in Congress. There should be an even base. When you look at the age ranges in Congress, the majority of these people don't represent the population. Where are the young minds with brilliant ideas who can create, who can strike a balance? My guess is many of the young people who would venture into this feel tentative about it because of how toxic it is. Nobody wants their lives and their private lives and all sorts of things and threats and all that spewed against them because they have a difference of opinion or they feel strongly about something. Nobody wants to feel that way because they happen to be a minority, a person of color. Nobody wants to feel that way because they happen to be a female, and in some cases, a female of a different ethnicity. Nobody wants to sit there and be blamed for something that the country of origin, the country of their ancestral origin did when they're here as an American citizen. It is toxic what's going on in our government. And while there's so many other things that we can talk about, I keep coming back to this because I need you. I am doing my part by making sure that this conversation, as long as you tune into 247 Real Talk Podcast, this will never leave your mind because I won't let it. But I need you to start using your influence as constituents, as Americans, to make your impact in Washington so they take notice and either they govern for the people, by the people, or they're no longer there. Stop going into the voting booth and voting, oh, I'm Republican, all Republicans, or I'm Democrat, all Democrats, or I'm independent, all independents, without knowing the candidates individually and what they stand for. It's okay to go in the booth as a Democrat and vote for a Democrat here and a Republican there and an independent there. Start voting for people and the value they bring to their lives. The system we have is broken. I'll go beyond that. The system we have is destroyed. Look at the destruction in Washington. Tell me it isn't. Look at how toxic and hateful the people who we elected to unite us are. I've got friends of mine that I struggle with a lot online too. Every time I see them post a message, say on Facebook, every time President Biden does something, the only thing they can say, or Vice President, or anyone Democrat for that matter, is something hateful. I've got some, as soon as some Republican posts something, the first thing they post is something hateful. They haven't even given the individual a chance. They haven't even, and what's worse, isn't it amazing how we could condemn, we're so brainwashed. I don't want to say loyal because it's not loyalty. We're so brainwashed into being 100% aligned with the ideology of one party that we can spew hatred at someone else across the aisle simply because they are from another party and know nothing about them. Don't realize that maybe one time in their life they did something, or several times in their lives they voted something for some things that impacted our lives in a positive way. Look, there are so many things that I had in mind to come on here in this episode and speak about. There's an issue I want to talk about with rent and landlords that the people need to know, especially in places like New York where rents are so high. This issue I wanted to talk about is probably an issue that at some point that people should need to start taking to our Attorney General, etc., for investigations. There's issues of mental health that still need to be discussed. Have you seen what's going on in our schools? Have you seen what's going on with the what they call it, swatting, where you every single day now in New York you're hearing how many schools are shut down because of swatting? Have you seen, and I'm speaking about New York because I live in New York. I'm sure people from other states have similar stories, maybe about different things, but similar in nature or in importance. Every single day in New York, someone's being shoved onto the subway tracks. Those who are lucky end up in critical at the hospital. Those who are unlucky end up under the wheels of a train. And the people who are pushing them are known to the system. We have a mental health crisis. And I don't know what the solution is, but let's talk about it. Let's talk about it amongst each other. Let's create this group and this empowerment that I'm talking about to talk about it. Let's get Washington to recognize that these are the things we need you to talk about. There's monies that's needed to make sure that these people get the treatment that's needed. There are laws and rules that need to be made because these people are being sent back out onto the street and they're taking lives. They're changing lives forever in a negative way. And it's easy for us to say, oh, that person has a mental health issue, the emotionally disturbed person. We're doing nothing about it. We're doing nothing about it because it's the change has to start from the top down. It has to start with Washington, D.C., those people we elected at the highest levels of government. And what do we have if you wanted to reach out to them right now and say help? We have a House of Representatives that's crumbling down. Let me know when you decide, like me, that you're fed up. Let me know when you decide, like me, that what is happening there is not only unacceptable, it is something that we, the people, should make them take notice of, that we are demanding not only they fix it, but they fix it in a fair manner. They fix it with open minds, and they fix it by electing someone who will help to guide the two parties and bring them together across the aisles so that the decisions they make and the laws that they vote on are for the people, because they are there by the people. Next time, I'm going to talk about more social issues, because I have a few of them, like I said, that go more to a granular level of what we experience each and every day. But I thought that I had to highlight this because while we're so busy with our lives, this nonsense is occurring in Washington. And I find that so many of us have so many challenges just to get by each day that we fail to pay attention to the walls that are crumbling down. I thank you so much again, for joining me this week. I know sometimes some conversations are easier than others, but I say these things and want you to think about them. Pick up a newspaper. Newspapers are, I don't know. Go on Google. Go on the internet and look up these things I'm talking about. See not only what's going on, but look at the history of these candidates. Understand by the selection of one or the other what it means for you and me and for our country. And let's start making a difference. We have to. I implore you to be a part of something that changes your life while you're still here on this planet and changes the lives of generations to come. I would love to have millions of followers so that this conversation can be so large that Washington knows not only my name, but by me, I make them know your names. I would love to be able to fund movements that make a change and a difference that they cannot ignore. It's not easy growing a base and having these conversations when they're so difficult and people rather listen to basketball scores or baseball scores or comedians. People, it's a funny thing, and I'm going to say this before I sign off. I look at other podcasts like podcasts, and I look at podcasts that are unlike mine. I'm very sure that if I would talk to you each week about gossip, that I would gossip truths or untruths about celebrities' lives, about their kids, about their houses, about their nannies, about their dogs, I would have thousands, if not hundreds of thousands of subscribers. This is real talk. These are real issues. Sometimes they're repetitive, but they're not repetitive because I repeat them. They're repetitive because our government or society is repeating them. And they have to be kept in the minds of us and of those who are still fighting the fight to make a difference, not just for us, but ultimately for everyone. And so as we continue to do this, I stand firm in my commitment. Whether one of you listens to every episode, whether 10 of you listen to every episode, whether 1,000 of you or 2,000, and I want to encourage those of you who go to YouTube to share it and to subscribe and to ask others to subscribe and listen. I find out every day, like I said, I have listeners who have never heard of. One of the things you will see on YouTube, because this YouTube channel is started this year and is still pretty young, that many of my episodes, don't have tons of listens at times. Maybe sometimes a dozen, 2 dozen. Keep in mind that my biggest base of listeners as I transition is still my audio base. And I promise you that there's thousands upon thousands of people who are listening to the audio version. I chose to bring this video version on because I think ultimately I can reach a bigger audience. Ultimately, I can get to a point where it's self funding so that the equipment can continue to be upgraded and my presentation can be better. And most of all, I can start funding charities and start funding movements and start funding change. Until I get to then, however long it takes, I am here. Even if one of you is listening to me, I am here. If 100,000 of you are listening to me, I am here. Not just because I choose to sit here each and every week and put this together, but because I believe that it is my duty to earn my place and my right in this world as I continue to breathe air and have a heartbeat in a world that my Almighty God provided. That is my belief. This, I believe, is one of His wills for me. And so He has empowered me, so I shall do. I thank you so much again for another week, for listening to my episodes. I thank you so much for your support. Please do like, share, comment. It brings energy to what I'm doing. As you go ahead for the next week, and at least you're on the Eastern Seaboard here, you're going into fall. It's slowly getting cooler. I encourage you to enjoy the life and the things that we've been blessed with. Every single day, I tend to begin to, as my audience expands, I tend to hear of people who were here yesterday and gone tomorrow. So remember, each day is an opportunity to enjoy life, to enjoy the gift of life, and to have a positive impact on some other human being so that their day and their life too will be blessed by your presence. You have likely been put on this planet to be someone else's miracle. Make it a reality. Thanks again so much for your time and for your ear. I look forward to speaking with you again next week. And until then, as I always tell you, please take care of yourselves and make sure that you take care of each other.